Hello friends, today we're going to make a card that is perfect for beginners, as you don't need a lot of supplies, but it's also great for seasoned card makers who have a lot of supplies and want to use their stash rather than going out and buying particular stamps or die sets. So this is the template I'm going to be using today. So all you need to make this is a paper trimmer, some adhesive, liquid or tape runner. I prefer liquid. Then you need some cardstock, some coordinating pattern paper or designer series paper, as Stampin' Up calls it. Two-sided paper means you can get two different designs, because you're going to need pattern paper for this mat and pattern paper for this mat, and you want it to be different. You want the one on the top to be the more striking. The one on the bottom is going to be more subdued. Then you also need a stamp set for your sentiment. It can just be a stamp set that has only sentiments, some ink, an acrylic block to put the stamp on. So, to begin with, you need to create your card base. Your cardstock comes in 8.5 by 11, and you can get 2 card bases per sheet. There are 2 ways of doing it. You can take your 8.5 by 11 piece and cut it on the long side in half at 5.5. This is 11 inches long. Half of 11 is 5.5. So you cut it at 5.5. That gives you 2 card bases. Then you score. This is your 8.5 side, and now this is 5.5. So on the 8.5 side, you split that in half. That's 4 1/4, and you score at 4 1/4. Or you can take your 8.5 piece and cut in half on the short side. So this is the 8.5 inch side. Half of that is 4 1/4. So you cut it 4 1/4. Now you have a piece that is 11 by 4 1/4, and you score it at the halfway mark, which would be 5.5. So today I have chosen to cut my piece of paper, my cardstock, in half at 5.5, and I'm scoring at 4 1/4. You can use white cardstock as your base. You can use colored cardstock as your base. If you're using colored cardstock, you want something that coordinates with your pattern paper. So when you score, you can see that this side is indented and this side is raised. When you make a card base and you're folding your cardstock, you want to fold it so that this raised part is on the inside. This helps to prevent any cracking of the cardstock. Then you can get your bone folder, which I don't have handy, or just use my finger and crease it down. This is my card base. You need to cut 2 pieces of pattern paper. The bottom layer, this darker gray square, you're going to cut at 2 3/4 inches, 2 3/4 inches by 3 inches. And then the second one, see, this is directional, so I have to make sure I'm cutting it the right way. You're going to cut it 2.5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. Then you're going to take the shorter piece and you're going to put it down at an angle. I like to use liquid glue because it gives me a little bit of wiggle room. It doesn't dry immediately. And you can see I've used the same piece of paper. I've just flipped it over. So this is the more subtle side. This is the side with more of a pattern. Oops. glue there. This glue is nearly empty. Okay. And I'm going to put it down at a slight angle. Sometimes I have a large acrylic block that I like to, that's what happens when you put too much on, that I like to put on top. It just weighs it down, keeps it flat for a little bit until that liquid glue takes hold. Then, taking my second piece, and I'm going to, glue that on. Now, I want this corner to stick out. I want this corner to stick out. I want this corner to stick out, but this one will be covered. And this is going on to the cardstock straight. And I have approximately the same amount of cardstock showing on either side of this pattern paper. Next, you need a piece of cardstock for your sentiment. It can be white, it can be colored, it's up to you. And you're going to stamp your sentiment on here. Now I am using the terrific Toadstool because it matches the theme of this. This paper is actually retired. This is still available, but I'm not sure how much longer it's in the annual catalog. So you could use colored cardstock, as I said, or white cardstock. Not sure which I like better. I think I'm going to stick with the white for now. And I'm going to stamp my sentiment. Now, this shows it as little flag ends. You don't have to do it like that. I'm stamping it in black ink, but you could stamp it in coordinating ink as well. Now I have a pair of scissors. I'm just going to trim this end, and I'm going to trim it, I feel like, at an angle for this one. Maybe. Yeah, I think so. Then I'm going to take a little bit more glue. That's running out. And I'm going to stick it on so it covers up this line and sticks out just a little. So there you go. Here. Toy it back down until it dries. And that is basically all you need. Now, if you want to zhuzh it up, you could put a little ribbon. You could put some gems on. I'm thinking I might put some gems on. So I'm going to use this Take Your Pick tool to help pick them up. It's very useful. Again, not necessary, but useful. You can use a toothpick. And I think I'm going to put, usually you put on an odd amount, 3 or 5, and you try and get them in like a triangular kind of shape, but not an equilateral triangle. I think I'm going to do it like that. And there is your simple card that you can make with any pattern paper, any stamp set, any cardstock. Now, to show you some alternatives, I made this one. You can see this one I added a ribbon, a little linen thread, and I added a mat, which is 1/8 of an inch shorter on all sides. So this is 4 inches by 5.5 inches mat, and then I just did the same design. Here's some really old cardstock that I had from like 2008. Same thing. See here, I did a straight rectangle. Here I did little flag ends, added some gems. Very simple. No mat on this one. This one, instead of using pattern paper for the top, I stamped an image and colored it. But same design. Here's another one with a mat. This is a sentiment that I used my glimmer machine. I think it's Spellbinders, and then die cut it. Here's another one. I added some die cut leaves behind it. Here's a Christmas one with a mat. Added some ribbon. Here's another Christmas one with a mat. This is also glimmered. I think it's Spellbinders. I used some snowflakes. So there's lots of different ways. Oh, and I did this Valentine's, sorry. And I did this Valentine's with day one. So this shows that you don't even need pattern paper, because I made my own pattern paper by stamping a design. Then I used an embossing folder for the back and an embossing folder for this, and I added some embellishments on top. Stamped and die cut. This is from the Hearts of Elegance set, which is retired. But this embossing folder is coming out in the new mini catalog, January to April. So that's coming out next week. So lots of ways to use your stash or get into card making if you don't have a huge stash. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks and happy crafting.